Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Video Game Voters Network Next Rammus Release Tournament, the 3rd edition. My name is Dan Frodan Joe, and today is day 1 of the weekend tournament where we will cover Group A and as much as Group B before we sign off for the final day of BlizzCon America qualifiers. VGVN3 is packed with storylines. Fans have come to see reigning champion Kolento and runner-up Hyped to fend off incoming 4 new invites, Firebat, Nyria, Sixo, and Brian Kibler, as well as 2 open qualifier players, Fake and Savitz. Here to cover the action with me is MTG Hall of Famer Paulo Vito Damo de Rosa, also known as PVDDR. PV, how's it going tonight?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing not too bad myself, covering lots of Hearthstone, but I'm excited to have you on the desk for the first time and on the air for Hearthstone. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Absolutely. So guys, the way that it's going to break down is we're going to have round robin groups for people who are coming into this tournament unaware of how VGVN's gone in the past. We have round robin groups for Group A and B. The top 2 seeded players will advance to a single elimination format where we'll expand the best of 5 to a best of 7 and then kind of go from there. PV, can you break down more of the intricacies of the rules and how the gameplay and format will go for the series between these players?
Yeah, so this is going to be a best of 5. Every person in Group A is going to play against every other person in Group A. Then the same for Group P. 2 people are going to advance from each group. It's a best of 5. They each have 4 decks. They ban 1 deck. Winner stays, and loser has to change their deck. So a pretty standard format, I would say. Like very similar to many other tournaments we've played before. And I think it should be pretty interesting to see how bans are going to affect the whole Hunter thing. Because I expect we're going to see a lot less Hunter bans this tournament than we usually do.
Right. Perhaps these guys have figured out ways to counter it. In fact, I know that players like Firebat in his practice group have felt like Hunter might be a little overrated at the moment, despite the fact that it has dominance. It's very robust with all of its options and its versatile toolbox. They feel like there's ways to kind of build around it and not have to ban it. I'm not sure if it's going to be the case here because this tournament is pre-recorded, but it's very recent. And the One Nation of Gamers production crew, as well as Liquid Hearth, has been very good to flip it around once again and make sure this is a high-value production. And today, by the way, guys, we're not just going to cover one group. We're going to try to cover Group A and B as much as we can. Because once again, we're going to try to go all the way up until the fact that we're going to have to sign off for the BlizzCon America qualifiers. So stay with us. It's going to be a long day, but it's going to be fun. And I want to kind of cover the fact that these players here are they're some of the best, at least online. You have the number 1 and 2 seeds for Europe and North America for the BlizzCon qualifiers, where Firebat and Hyped represent North America, and Nyria and Kolento are 1 and 2 respectively, too, in Europe. And then we even have great seeds like Fake, Sixo, who did really well in Europe. And then well-known players like Savitz from Hearthstone and Brian Kibler, of course, one of the big elephants in the room, written by Liquid Hearth as a great player because of his background in card games and design and play in Magic the Gathering. And people are expecting him to do well. Do you kind of root for Brian here just because he's kind of the hometown crowd for you, Paul?
I do a little bit, yeah. I mean, we were teammates in Magic, so we both play in the same team. And yeah, I'm hoping he does well as representing Magic players. But at the same time, this is a pretty tough field, and everyone's very good. So it's going to be pretty hard, but I hope he does well.
Yeah, definitely. Now, do you have the schedule of matches that we're going to be expecting? Like, who's going to be the first match we have here?
Oh, we're going to do Firebat versus Kolento first.
All right, that's going to be really cool. Matching up of number 2 versus number 1 in Europe. And that's going to come from Group A. In fact, I believe we have the staging for the pre-match ceremonies already prepared to see what these guys have banned. So let's jump into it. And while we do, let's quickly discuss a little bit about what this tournament's about. You see, you can enter for your chance to win the Zeus Mini Cyberpower PC in the bottom of the screen. And if you're the first batch of people kind of viewing and wondering what it is, they're giving away a computer at the end of the tournament, so make sure to get your opportunity to sign up with that link, and we'll talk more about it throughout the tournament. All right, PV, let's see what's going on here. It seems like the early bans have been Hunter denied by Firebat over Kolento, and Kolento has opted to leave Hunter and ban Warlock. What do you think about this?
Ooh, I knew that. Yeah, actually, when I was looking at the deck list, I thought Kolento is definitely going to ban Warlock here. It makes perfect sense, because Kolento's lineup is Hunter, Druid, Warrior, and Rogue. So assuming Kolento is going to get his Hunter banned, which is what happened, he has no deck that can beat Henlock. Like if you look at his warrior list, it's right there. He doesn't even play a big game hunter. He doesn't play Black Knight. So that would probably be his best matchup against Warlock, and it's still not good. So I think Kolento has to have come to this tournament with the idea that it's just going to ban Handlock every single time. I suspect that every time we see Kolento paired against a Warlock deck, it's just going to get banned, and Hunter is going to get through.
Yeah, it's a great point there, and the decks that Kolento brings, we see Druid class, we see Miracle Rogue, we see Warrior. Those three classes, at least if I'm assuming it's the aggressive token Druid deck that we've been seeing out of Cloud9, they stand pretty good odds against the current rendition of Hunter that's popular. So maybe Kolento's okay with playing versus Hunter. He feels like he has a good chance against the rest of the field, and we'll see if it's going to pay off. We're going to lead off with excuse me, it's not the aggressive Druid whatsoever. It's the ramp Druid that's going to be from Firebat and a control warrior for Kolento. Now, how does this matchup stack up in favor of either classes here, PV?
I would have to think that the Druid deck is a little bit favored here. It's tough to say because they both have a lot of late game minions, so it could go either way. But it's going to depend a lot on how many executes Kolento can use effectively to kill stuff like Ancient or War, and how much he can get his armor up so that he can slam those big threats. So I would give the edge to Firebat here, because I think he has a lot of minions that are hard to remove, and Kolento doesn't have a lot of ways to remove them. But if Kolento manages, early executes and to get... Firebat doesn't have a good way to remove minions either. So if Kolento can make good use of its executes, I think he could win, but I would give the edge to Firebat.
All right, well, let's see if this new tech, like Zombie Chow in the ramp, will allow him to kind of get the edge in matchups. Don't know if it'll be high impact whatsoever against Warrior, but these are two of the slowest decks possible out there, at least in the current popular metagame. Let's go into game one and find out who's going to get the early edge in this best of 5. Now, we do apologize as we heard that Firebat's POV actually got a little corrupted in the finals. But we still have his hand at the very least. Oh, no, just kidding. I guess we're just going to hop on Kolento's POV and hopefully get some information from time to time on what Firebat's doing. All right, so right off the bat, we see that Kolento does have Execute, so he can answer like a big innervated creature, and he's not exactly sure what kind of Druid it is, but with a Wild Growth Star, that's probably the best thing the Druid can ask for right off the bat. PV, you still with me, buddy?
Yeah, I am.
All right, so it looks like Senjin to follow up on the really quick innervate start, and this is important just to get a mana acceleration, ramp up as fast as you can, and to be 2 mana ahead of your opponent when you're going first, and to be able to play the threats is really important in this control game. You want to be able to play your threats, pressure Warrior as best as you can. And so Firebat, he's playing his turns pretty quickly because it seems like the most important thing for Druid is not to miss these drops.
Yeah, so yeah, here we see, both players have a lot of late game minions, but Firebat is ahead, so he's going to play them first. So to be on Kolento to answer them. Which, again, is not extremely easy with this Warrior deck.
Okay, but he's starting to piece together a pretty decent hand, right? He's got like Shield Block, Shield Slam for a combination to answer a lot of the mid-game threats. He's got ways to draw and maybe pop his Execute with things like his Acolyte. So he's got some tools here. Not to mention he's starting to pick up some mid-range creatures to answer whatever the threats that Druid can present. And it's important so that way you can control the board as the Warrior player. In the end, I think Kolento's deck scales into late game slightly better because of the options that he has. Not to mention cards like Ysera give Druid quite the headache.
Yeah, Ysera is pretty hard for this deck to deal with. Also here, interesting, we see that Kolento did not just coin low-tab on turn 4, which was a possible play, but I think the reason he didn't do that is because he didn't have turn 5 play anyway. So that will be getting the low tab in play, but it wouldn't accomplish anything. It wouldn't accelerate him by a turn. So he's probably just waiting so he can play Sylvanas on turn 6 and then Ragnar's on turn 7 if it comes to that.
Okay, well now Lotheb is out as the most intimidating minion and shuts down any possibility of really using spells effectively. But now Firebat comes up on a pretty crucial turn. Like, Kolento will start seeing what kind of cards that Firebat has. Does he have something like Ancient of Lore to start pushing out a 5/5 body and draw cards? Or maybe even something bigger. Maybe perhaps some of the biggest minions that Firebat has in his arsenal.
Yeah, turn 7 is pretty key for the Druid deck because it has Ancient of War and Ancient of Lore. Both of which are very, very good in this matchup. And both of which do not get affected by Lotheb at all. Actually, this deck is pretty resistant to Lotheb. I think he only runs one Force of Nature. And, basically, this Lotheb effect is almost irrelevant at this point.
Oh my.
Ooh, so that's bad news for Firebat. Oh, especially because Kolento
wow.
uses Ledge Voucher. But it's bad news because of what it means. It means Firebat doesn't have any of the other 7-drops, which were huge in this matchup. So the fact that he played the Black Knight, not only did he waste the Black Knight without using its effect, but it also means he doesn't have anything else. So he's in a pretty bad position.
Yeah, definitely. Could be even more situational cards beyond Black Knight. He could be holding something like the Big Game Hunter, which he's been which will be very important for big cards like Ragnaros or Alexstrasza. But in the meantime, Firebat's just it looks like he played the Sunwalker quickly off the top of his deck, which means it kind of confirms that he might be holding situational cards, maybe like Innervate that really can't be used at the moment, something like the Big Game Hunter or more.
Wall Growth, maybe, just waiting to get to those 10 mana to 10 mana crystals to be able to cycle that. Yeah, Kolento's hand is looking pretty stacked. Considering his opponent is not doing anything, I have to imagine Kolento is going to have the edge this game.
Yeah, gosh, but that Divine Shield is being so annoying at the moment.
Yeah, it really is.
Hard to crash the gates.
Because Kolento doesn't have a way to deal a small amount of damage to that, so he can hit it for 5 to pop the Divine Shield. That's really not what you want to do. If you have like Cruel Taskmaster, that's how you want to get rid of Divine Shield.
Okay, so Firebat, the highest mana cost card that I recall looking at the deck list was a card like Cenarius. So maybe that could be a card that he's been holding for a while, but looks like he's gonna use spells, some of the more reactive cards that we thought he had. And Zombie Chow pops out. I think it's not gonna be extremely effective, so the earlier the better, as opposed to potentially shutting down your ability to finish the game at the late stages with Savage Roar and Force of Nature.
Yeah, definitely. Zombie Chow is definitely a card that is not there for this matchup. Let's put it that way. Well, it might be good now. It might soak up a Ragnar's hit, which is probably the best it could ever be.
Right, and Kolento still can follow us up with removal.
Yeah, he's going to. It's smart. He doesn't need that coin anymore, and it's not gonna get much better than that. It feels like.
Ooh, that's a value Zombie Chow. Although, I guess Kolento does heal for 5, so it doesn't lose too much on the 6 damage, I suppose. And in the end, you're just kind of expecting removal, and most of the time you're trying to give the Ramp Druid a difficult time to deal with these big minions. And Firebat doesn't have access to the Big Game Hunter. It seems like he has to drop the Cenarius to try to set up as many targets as possible. And this gives an opportunity for Kolento to follow it with 2 Ragnaroses and put an insane amount of pressure on his opponent.
Yeah, definitely. 2 Ragnar's is pretty cool.
Oh man, and it lands on the main Cenarius body. This is a bad position for Firebat, and I don't think anyone still is catching on to running cards like Poison Seed. So how do you go for this mass removal on 2 8/8 Ragnaros?
Yeah, you can. You need to have, you could have the combo. Yeah, which he does. I think he only runs 1 of each. But that will clear the board. And, it's either that or 2 swipes. And luckily he had that, but, Kolento still has another weapon and still has Sylvanas. So, still looking good for Kolento here, I think.
Yeah, the fact that he had the 2 pieces of the combo right there was probably Firebat's only way to eject out of that situation without being completely hopeless. If the Ragnaros got another shot or two in, it probably would have been too hard to bounce back, because now you're always floating in the range of Grommash being a finisher. So now Firebat's going to be drawing, hopefully, the answer to every single minion that comes out. Maybe something like Keeper of the Grove, number 2 for Sylvanas. Until then, he's staring at 6 power on the board and a very powerful clock that could end the game soon.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't like playing Sylvanas into an empty board sometimes, because if your opponent kills it, you get no value. But against his Hunter deck, against his Druid deck, that's pretty safe. Because there's basically no way for them to kill it through a taunt. Like, they would have to play, you know, Swipe and Wrath. And, you know, that's probably good for you still.
Oh my. Kolento is sitting at the 14 health mark, where Grommash could be a finisher. Firebat's in a really tough spot, and he's also used some of his biggest minions already. But I'm pretty sure that there's no way he can wiggle himself out of here. There's an Execute and Sylvanas. That's 2 forms of removal, effectively.
Yeah, even if he plays Ancient of War, this doesn't get stolen by Sylvanas. Here also we see that Kolento, he could have Shield Slam his own Sylvanas, he chose not to. So he just wants to be more aggressive.
Yeah, I think protecting Sylvanas when your opponent clearly shown that there's no way to deal with it is just another threat that in multiple ways, because you can affect the board state, and it's also a 5/5 body that's getting you closer to win. Kolento feels really comfortable because there's lots of flexibility in how he can do this turn, with trading with Sylvanas to try to draw a minion, or even use Execute. Firebat recognizes that it's a very long shot to win, so he's going to draw cards with Ancient of Lore, but it won't matter because Kolento has the big finisher, and he's going to start off this series with a win.
Yeah, here again, we have to see that Firebat, he could have gained 5 life, but he wouldn't have helped at all. So he just recognized, I have to draw something to try to win this game, and if he has Grommash, I'm going to lose, and there's nothing I can do about it. So just might as well try to draw something.
So sitting back and reflecting, you know, you kind of point out a very critical miss for Firebat. It wasn't a misplay, but it was just the fact that he whiffed and didn't have really much to do, and he dropped Black Knight on a couple. A couple turns he had nothing to do. He dropped Black Knight when there was nothing else. He missed turn 7 as well, not having one of the Ancients to potentially
that was
affect
when he
the
played
board.
Black Knight, I think. Yeah, he played Black Knight on turn 7. So
Okay,
that means
right.
no Sledge Belcher, no Druid of the Claw, no Sunwalker, no Ancient of Lore, and no Ancient of War. You know, all his good late game cards just weren't there.
Yeah, it's too bad, honestly. But now that Druid's out, it seems like he's going to be resorting to his Rogue or his Hunter. Now, we're pretty much going to guess that this is a mid-range Hunter and a Miracle Rogue of some kind. And I think Firebat's going to be selecting Rogue here for game 2. So let's quickly jump to the board and see what he has prepared specifically. Maybe if he's including some secret tech. I know some players are kind of keen on playing Sludge Belchers and Miracle Rogue nowadays. It feels like Sludge Belcher's very versatile, and you just slide it in. Not sure if it impacts this matchup particularly, but I know Firebat's always one of those players who likes including 1 or 2 cards to really throw their opponents off guard. Yeah,
we've seen Firebat play a version of Rogue that has Zombie Chow and Ringleader, or like the one that puts another 2/1 guy in play. He wrote about it on Reddit, and he actually climbed a lot on ladder with that. But I think he's not playing that version because he was planning on banning Hunter anyway, and he said that version is only better against Hunter and Zoo. So I would expect him to be playing a normal version.
Yeah, that's a astute observation. As much as Firebat shows some of these decks to the general public, that's not the one that you can always bank on as something that you can predict he will bring to a tournament. Not to mention that these players are becoming increasingly secretive now that BlizzCon is drawing near, because they're saving some of their best for coming up. That said, this metagame that's been recorded was also in a time where people were still trying to figure out the best counters to Hunter. Wasn't exactly as fleshed out as it is a week later. And you might expect a week to not be that much of a difference, but in Hearthstone life cycles of how things rotate, a week is like a big difference in whether or not you figure out a matchup or you're still struggling.
Yeah, definitely. And all those people were people who climbed ladder a lot. To do that, they had to have beaten Hunter a bunch of times, because Hunter, you know, half their matches were against Hunter. So I have to feel like everyone who came to this tournament feels like they have something to beat Hunter.
Yeah, these two decks actually are some of the best, Warrior and the Miracle Rogue.
Yeah, Firebat's still bad Hunter though. So even though you feel like you could be ready, you're just sometimes just don't want to deal with it.
I wonder.
Because Hunter is a deck that sometimes just kills you.
I can always get behind banning Hunter, at least in the current state of the metagame. We don't know after September 22nd if that's anything worthy anymore of the banning. In the meantime, Firebat's going to use some of his removal to take the board presence away. It's not about the threat of it, it's just more of what it can do, especially with cards like Cruel Taskmaster that can start putting on pressure. And I guess he's just going to give the draws anyways to Warrior. It's not really the Rogue's concern at this point.
Yeah, definitely. It's much more about, you know, I think the Warrior can draw. You know, you see he backstabs his Acolyte of Pain here. So it's not really much about what the Warrior is drawing. I think it's more about what the Miracle Rogue deck is drawing. Because if Miracle Rogue does its thing, it's gonna win the game, regardless of what Warrior does. But if he doesn't manage to do it quickly enough, then Warrior will just spiral out of control, regardless of how many cards he drew.
That's right. Now, Kolento astutely plays his Death Spite, and now he slams Karen. And this is because he knew on this turn he wanted to push out Karen, so that way it's more resistant to something like Sap, so he can just play it again. And that's why he equipped Death Spite, because if he needed to answer a 4-health minion that commonly comes on turn 5, he had an option to use Death Spite and play the minion, rather than playing more passive with like Armor Smith and trying to go for a slower setup.
Yeah, that's definitely very smart from Kolento's side, just predicting how the game is going to go. You know, I think a lot of players would not have played a Death Spite, just naked on turn 4. But it's going to be really good for him. Now he either forces a conceal or he has a way to deal with the Actioneer.
Alright, Firebat gets Phantom Knives off the preparation, so he's going to be drawing a lot of cards. But does he have that conceal, like you mentioned, to potentially secure him more cards in the future, barring any kind of unforeseen removal like Brawl? And he doesn't. He's going to end the turn with 1 additional mana, and this opens up some possibilities for Kolento.
Yeah, definitely. He also drew an Acolyte of Things, so if he wants, he can draw some extra cards with the Death Spite trigger.
Maybe rack some armor as well, and you still have mana to even execute.
Yeah, so do you think Kolento executes here or just attacks the Actioneer?
Ooh, well, when you have this kind of ability to gain health with the Armor Smith, I think you can attack and start cashing in value. Because you're still kind of afraid in the back of your mind of something like Sap, too. So I guess the Karen immediately is able to put some board presence here.
No, I thought he was going to attack with the Death Spite. Apparently he wants to preserve his life total a lot.
Ooh, second Azure Drake. Now that's not a card that you always see in Miracle Rogue. Just because there's a lot of good drops that you can now put into your deck, whether it's a Lotheb, you know, Assassin's Blade has always been in and out. And there's not always room for this second Azure Drake, especially if you're putting in Sludge Belchers as kind of the new tech and the popular flavor of the month.
Yeah, but Azure Drake is very good against Priest, which is also kind of, you know, the new flavor of the month. True. You see a lot of Priest stacks on ladder, and, you know, being a 4/4 minion is pretty hard for them to deal with a very relevant ability. So this might mean that playing 2 of them might mean that Firebat expected people to play Priest.
Well, if he heard Brian Kibler's in the tournament, I wouldn't think that's a bad call whatsoever.
Yeah, Kibler's definitely playing Priest.
All right, and Kolento is going to be drawing a lot. This is a nice planned out turn, so he can have a lot of good responses. He's got answers to everything: double execute, shield slams, weapons. He's got Alex Straza to start putting on pressure if things move too slow and he gets his board removed. And he has Armor Smith gaining an insane health.
And he's at 34. Yeah, so Kolento here is at a point where Firebat cannot just burst him out. You know, he's not going to die to Leroy Shadow Step because he's at such a high life total. So Firebat would need constant threats of damage. He needs creatures that can attack over and over instead of things that do it only once. But Kolento has all the removal spells. So if he can't burst him out and he can't stick creatures to the board, how is he going to win? I don't think he is.
Kolento draws Ragnaros, by the way. Puts a little frown, like, not bad. The Obama face.
This guy's toast.
Gosh, Firebat's just had to play so... like, a step behind his efficiency. You know, he's had to backstab the Acolyte to remove the Armor Smith #1, and now he's had to use like SI7 to give like an extra armor. Like all these little small things are tallying up to be a very big lead for Kolento. But you know, it's not over. But at the same time, I kind of look at Kolento's hand and it's like, well, else is he missing besides Gromosh?
Yeah, there's basically nothing. And you see the Firebat, he just doesn't care about giving Kolento armor anymore because he knows he's not going to burst him out. So he has to win with the board. So, okay, you know, I'll give you like 4 armor to get rid of your 1/4. And that's fine with me. You know, there's not, my win condition here is not bursting you out, it's just sticking a threat. But he's not going to stick one because we know Kolento's hand.
Oh, Kolento's hand is magnificent if you're a Warrior fan. Now, he has a couple plays available to him. He can plop a big minion down like Ragnaros and try to just, you know, force your opponent to have sap or basically have so much pressure that you're going to be able to just snowball the game out of control. You also can try to play some of these removal spells to effectively take away another way for the Miracle Rogue to win. Just like you said, if you're out of the burst range, you can continue to play consistent to deny your opponent the ability to finish, and then you know, no pressure to rush the game on Kolento's end, right? The Control Warrior outscales the Miracle Rogue.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Kolento's play here. As long as you get rid of the consistent damage threats, you're not going to lose. So that's what he does. You know, he spends his entire turn clearing his opponent's minions. It doesn't advance his board as much, but he doesn't have to. You know, he's going to win this game eventually, like academically. You know,
academically, I like that word. Is that used often in Magic the Gathering broadcast?
I don't know. I like it. That's one of my favorite words. But
it's good because it just means so much. And Kolento is one of those players that plays by the book. You know, he's the guy who's textbook created something like Miracle Rogue for the mainstream, that is, and on his stream he's always explaining how to play extremely safe and denying your opponent's win conditions. It's not necessarily about enforcing your own win conditions, but trying to also make your opponent very uncomfortable, and he's done exactly that. He's got a lot of ways to kind of turn on the aggression right now. Alex Straza puts his opponent down to 13 health or even less, but now it's going to be do or die for Firebat. He needs a game changer right now.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there is a game changer that he can have. Like, even if he plays Auctioneer and draws, you know, basically his entire deck, he could not possibly kill Kolento here. And there's one sap that's gone. Okay. You know, and once both saps are gone, this deck basically cannot beat as a Ledge Belcher.
Right, and not to mention Kolento might just draw into lethal right here. He has 14 damage with just the weapon and Gromosh, and there's no indication that there's going to be a taunter put up on the board. And Firebat's working he's working way too close to the line of danger of just dying.
Kolento can just play Ragnaros here, and if it hits the face, he wins. And if it hits the 4/4, you know, that's also good. I think the only way for Firebat to maybe win this game would have been to play... that wouldn't even help, like a gigantic Van Cleef and conceal it, but Kolento also has Sylvanas and Shield Slam, so even if he came to that, he would be able to steal the Van Cleef. Well, at least he's out of Ragnaros range, since he played the Blade Flurry.
You want to steal his Auctioneer with Sylvanas?
You can do that. I think the two options are stealing the Auctioneer or playing 2 Ledge Belchers. I think I like stealing Auctioneer. You can still play the Unstable Ghoul after that.
Well,
Who's going to play Ragnaros?
Is leaning towards putting an insane amount of pressure, basically putting his opponent at 1 health. It's going to miss their Gadget Stand, but it's okay because Kolento still has direct damage and ways to kind of seal the game. And the fact is, your opponent just showed sap, so he has 1 less likely card to use removal on, and puts Firebat still in an uncomfortable spot.
Yeah, is it possible that Kolento loses this game now? Like this turn? He's at 28, and his opponent has to get rid of a taunt guy. So probably not. There's probably some convoluted scenario that involves, you know, 2 Cold Bloods, or things that people generally don't play.
Right. That's really difficult. Like double Shadow Step 2 Cold Bloods is already kind of a very fringe scenario for deck building, but even then, that's still not enough.
Yeah. He also has to get rid of the top guy. Okay, so now both saps are out. So if Kolento just plays a bunch of Sludge Bashers, he's going to win. But with his opponent at 1, of course, you could just play 3 or Axe and attack.
Yeah, pretty much.
But assuming he plays, you know, another healer, he gains another 3 life, then Kolento's is not going to lose.
By the way, if you ever finish a game using just a weapon attack to the face, that's some of the best time to emote, because then it's like the emote carries with your hero portrait as it attacks your opponent. And you get like the close encounter.
Ooh, I hope I get to see that.
That's right. So you equip, you emote well played, and then you attack right afterwards.
No, he didn't do it.
Aww. That was the worst form of BM finish that I've ever seen. It's just like he could have played anything here. Yeah. But he even leaves up the auctioneer. It doesn't matter. Kolento's up 2-0, and he's never been more of the flashy player. He's been more of the consistent play academically, to borrow your word, and go up a 2-0 lead very comfortably.
Yeah, and that leaves Firebat with Hunter. And you have to imagine this is a deck Kolento was prepared to beat, because he didn't ban it. So Firebat's chance is not looking good, getting 3 wins off of that one deck. You see, again, sorry.
No, there's a deck to do it. I mean, Hunter is one of them, but he's coming up against 3 decks where I'm leaning towards Kolento every single time. I think the Warrior has a good shot. I think Rogue, of course, Miracle Rogue can always burst the Hunter out of the game if things don't go well. And then the Druid deck, I know from Cloud9, they think it's great against Hunter. So I think Kolento is going to be in a really prime position here to get his first series win under his belt.
Yeah, for sure. Which I did not expect when I looked at the decks. Honestly, I thought it was going to go Firebat's way. Apparently, I was very wrong. And we see Kolento's deck is, again, he doesn't have Black Man. He doesn't have Big Game Hunter. What he does have is, you know, Singeing Shieldmaster. So even his Warrior deck is a little bit geared towards beating Hunter. At least, like, more than he could have been.
That's right. You know, you're correct. It has a lot of tech where it could be very useful to him. But at the same time, these Warrior decks can draw poorly sometimes. It's been good so far for Kolento, but
yeah, sometimes you just lose to a Savannah Jaime. You know, that card is so good against Warrior.
Oh man, don't even get me started about Savannah Jaime. Let's jump into the board and find out if Firebat can use cards like Savannah Jaime to end this game and try to climb back in the series. It is one of his primary win conditions. Not to mention that he's also got interesting cards like Snake Trap. A very cool inclusion. Oh, we finally get Firebat POV, by the way.
Ooh, okay. Kolento mulligans his whole hand. He's just not interested in, you know, Gramaches and Acolytes of Pain. I think he just wants to go for the early game, which is what he gets with this hand.
Well, that's excellent. I think you're only wanting to have Armorsmith to pair with these things. Maybe an Acolyte as well, and you're kind of set to go.
Yeah, for sure. We see the Firebat, understandably, did not play his Timberwolf. You know, doesn't actually accomplish anything here.
It establishes dominance. That's about it. Play the Timberwolf and say you'll hunt him down. Ooh, Armorsmith pickup. This is very good once again for Kolento.
Yeah, Kolento's hand is definitely looking good. He has place, you know, that turns 2, 3, 4, 5. Probably 6 too. I mean, by the time he gets to that, he'll have some. Ooh, 2 Timberwolves. That's highly unusual. I feel those days. Like, at least most versions I see play 1 or 0.
Yeah, and this makes me believe that Firebat's just playing consistent with his game plan against the field. What you do is you can ban Hunter every single time, and then you don't have to play cards like Flare because you're not really using it to kill off any traps, because most likely Hunter's the only class that'll bring traps. And then you can use that 1 mana slot for cards that probably bring a little bit more utility overall, something like Timberwolves or Scavenging Hyena, etc.
Yeah, I like Hyena a lot in this format. It's very good against Warrior, just because a big minion.
Oh yeah. Not to mention if it ever gets too big, and then they have to use like Shield Slam on it, and you're just fist pumping because you have Hymen to follow it right afterwards.
Yeah, here we see that Kolento probably recognized that he was facing the threat of a Houndmaster, especially because Firebat didn't do anything. So what card does he have in hand? Just probably a Houndmaster somewhere. So he just goes ahead and uses that weapon to get rid of the only beast Firebat has. So now he can't play the Houndmaster.
Wow, what a rough start. And he just met this wall of Unstable Ghoul, another Naxxramas card that has a lot of interesting synergy with classes like Warrior. And this 1-3 has been untouched the entire game so far.
Yeah, and this keeps attacking for one. You know, doesn't even care about removing the 1-1s because they have to attack into it. They just die to his death rattle. At least Firebat drew the boar, which is going to allow him to make a turn 5 play, which is boar into Houndmaster. But without that, he would have nothing. He wouldn't even be able to play any of the cards in his hand. You know, that's the problem with the Hunter deck. He had 5 cards in hand previously, and he couldn't cast any of them. Even though he had 4 mana, he could cast all of them. He just didn't want to.
Oh, well. Again, has to kind of fight a little bit back for the board, do whatever he can to kind of pull back. But this is one of his ways he can start by doing it. And he also has Buzzard, so he's got ways to kind of chain draw and potentially cycle into some of the more important cards in this deck. But in the meantime, Kolento still has picked up some of his best cards to fight back against Hunter. He's got Armor Smiths. He's got ways to continue draws. He's got Sludge Belcher to kind of put any halt to aggression. Looking very good for Kolento still.
Yeah, I mean, if you establish, you know, early game with the Warrior deck, then the only card you lose to is Savannah Highmane, which is currently not in Firebat's hand. He does have 2 kill commands though. But yeah, what does he do now? Does he just play, you know, a Beast and Houndmaster? Probably has to, but he's definitely not happy about it.
Yeah.
Now both his Houndmasters are gone.
And they didn't even pick up any development on the board, really. I like how Kolento is just playing this matchup a little more aggressively. Like, Armor Smith is, in the eyes of a lot of Warrior players, one of the higher priority cards to get out, so that way you can start stacking armor early on. But just look at what Kolento's able to do. He's still at a high enough health count. He's continued to dissect the board, and he's the one putting pressure on his opponent. But that is an important draw for Firebat. Savannah Highmane is the card that you want to start picking up value. Even if it dies here, at least it's able to fight back some of the board presence.
Yeah, it is going to die. Probably. But yeah, even ends pretty good for him. This is the best card in his deck here. He would like to draw it every turn.
I wouldn't complain. Ooh, man, Kolento once again trading a little bit of his health, but it's okay. He's got Armor Smith, and he can draw cards.
Yeah, now he's going to get two small hyenas, but how much does that actually do? You know, they have to both attack into it. Well, he has skill commands, but assuming Kolento attacks one with this Ledge Belcher.
Well, it can start turning around as well if Firebat picks up Unleash the Hounds. That's another way to kind of start addressing the board and start to fill up your hand a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, I mean, Kolento is not a... You know, he just played Chill's Lamp, so that's better for him, but... Yeah, he's, you know, at 23 life, but Firebat has 10 damage in his hand. And Timberwolf, so...
Okay.
Yeah, here Firebat's gotta be thinking, you know, I just played the Buzzard and hope I draw into something with my small, cheap... Oh, so he does have traps in his deck. Okay, we hadn't seen a Boa trap or a Mad Scientist before.
Oh, that's annoying. Oh man, I really feel for Firebat, because that is one card off of the one he needed at that moment to kind of start opening up a lot of possibilities. But now this Armor Smith's again gaining a lot of health back for Kolento, and his health as a resource is starting to balance back up, put him outside of things like kill command range. And now Kolento has the board once again to start picking apart, doing some cool stuff, and still even gain some health because he's got a lot of these one-attack minions to start trading in.
Yeah, definitely. And he just plays Grommash here to get rid of the 4/4 bear, which is, you know, pretty good. He's going to clear the board except for the Mad Scientist. Gotta be feeling great about that. But here he chooses to trade the 1/2 taunt over attacking with the Armor Smith, which, you know, makes sense, considering the 2/2 would just attack. Oh, so he's still playing Flare.
Oh, he does play Flare. Yeah, that's interesting.
So what is he not playing? He has everything. He has, you know, Mad Scientist, Traps, Savannah Highmanes, Flares,
right.
2 Timberwolves. He's playing like 35 cards?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe somehow Firebat's cheating. I don't know. Of course, we're just joking. Firebat cannot actually have more than 30 cards.
Yeah.
By the way,
and,
a little...
And wouldn't, even if you could.
Yeah. Good sequencing. Make sure to kill off the Armor Smith before you kill off Gromosh. It seems like Firebat still has the logic going down in his head, but you can definitely tell by his camera that he is not pleased or amused by this situation, because Warrior's in full control and is looking like Kolento can 3-0, because there's going to be a big legendary coming out. Ragnaros is one of the best cards against Hunter, because you can just sit back and never activate these traps.
Yeah. I mean, it is very bad sometimes when they have a bunch of Unleash the Hound tokens, but the Warrior deck has a lot of clear, such as, Unstable Gold. I don't think Kolento is running Whirlwind, but Depth Spite and stuff like that. So if you can get rid of those small minions, then you're always going to get something good from Ragnaros. Like now, for example, and it would be happy whichever it hits. It's fine with Kolento.
PV, he's even got Ironbeak Owl. So I gotta ask the question again, what doesn't this deck have at this point? I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably some card, maybe he doesn't have both.
I don't know. Either way, it looks like we're gonna have to not find out and wait for another series to discover it. Firebat does have Snake Trap. I remember seeing that in the open mulligans. He's gonna have to wait for another series to play that.
It's what he got from Madsen. He's probably only playing Snake Traps, or maybe one Snake Trap, one Freezing Trap.
Sure.
Like that. Oh, that was an interesting match.
It was, because it was so one-sided that I have to kind of go back to a former storyline we had in the next Rambus Release Tournament number 2, where Kolento was the only player to have a decisive record going in the group stages. Everyone else was winning their series 3-2 or barely losing 2-3. And Kolento was winning 3-0, 3-1. And he had a very positive record, but everyone else got out of group stages like 2 games positive record overall. And once again, off to an excellent start and taking down one of the best players who perform on ladder in Firebat. He's ranked number 2. A pretty good start to the series, and Firebat will have more opportunities to prove it. He will be playing Fake in 6-0 for the rest of the day, which, by the way, Fake is going to be coming up against Kolento for our next match. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a few minutes and get ourselves settled and according. And when we come back, we'll have more from the VGVN number 3. So stay tuned.